Hello everyone, this is ARIRANG News. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung in Seoul. The stories we're following at this hour, at least 2 people have been confirmed dead in a major pileup involving some 100 vehicles on the Yeongjong Bridge near Incheon. More than 40 people are wounded, with 8 critically injured. Emergency response teams are still on site. The confirmation hearing for Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo enters its second day on this Wednesday. Lawmakers will vote on his nomination tomorrow. Whether he will get their approval is unclear. And the U.S. confirms that Islamic State militants have killed another American hostage. U.S. President Barack Obama says those responsible for the death will be brought to justice. But we begin with the latest on a massive collision involving around 100 cars on Yeongjong Bridge in the city of Incheon here in Korea. This is a major bridge that you have to cross to get to Seoul from Incheon International Airport. Now, the police say the accident occurred around 9:45 a.m. with a thick fog covering the area. So far, 2 people have been confirmed dead and about 40 others are wounded, including about a dozen foreign nationals. Emergency response teams are on site to clear the roads and transport the wounded to the hospital. Officials are currently looking into the exact cause of the accident, but they say the collision started after an airport bus crashed into the car in front of it. Now, police have blocked off roads leading to the area to prevent further collisions as of now. And moving on, Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo is facing another round of tough questions on the final day of his confirmation hearing on this Wednesday. Yesterday, the focus was on the allegation that he tried to control the media. Today, lawmakers are focusing on suspicions about his assets. For more on this story, here's our National Assembly correspondent, Park Ji-won.
The second day of the confirmation hearing for the nation's Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo began on Wednesday. Lawmakers from both parties are continuing their inquiries into a series of allegations against the former ruling Saenuri Party floor leader. In an apparent show of support for the nominee, his fellow Saenuri Party lawmakers focused primarily on questions about his future policy goals. Lawmakers from the main opposition party, meanwhile, pressed the 65-year-old nominee on allegations surrounding his family's wealth, his involvement in real estate speculation, and questions about his election campaign funds. On the first day of the hearing, Lee was grilled about some of the other allegations, including whether he tried to meddle with the media after he boasted he could pull strings at news media outlets in a private meeting with journalists, and whether he and his son properly fulfilled their mandatory military service. Meanwhile, the main opposition party's new chairman, Moon Jae-in, hinted that his party might not confirm the nominee. He said that even though the party had hoped to confirm him, as this is a third attempt to replace incumbent Prime Minister Chung Hong-won, it might be difficult. Speaking at the party's Supreme Council meeting on Wednesday morning, Moon added that the party will decide its official stance on the nominee after the 2-day confirmation hearing that's scheduled to end Wednesday. The previous 2 nominees both withdrew their names from consideration due to mounting allegations surrounding their past. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
A senior U.S. official says it's President Park Geun-hye's decision and her decision alone to determine whether she wants to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Moscow in May. But the official said so far Pyongyang has not shown that it is sincere about engaging in denuclearization talks. Our Ji Myung-gil tells us more.
U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken said the U.S. strongly supports President Park Geun-hye's efforts to hold inter-Korean talks, as it could help pave the way for Pyongyang to drop its nuclear ambitions. However, he believes Pyongyang is not showing sincerity towards positive engagement or denuclearization. And whether President Park meets with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un at a war anniversary ceremony in Russia is solely her decision. Blinken's trip to Seoul comes amid lingering concerns that Washington's tougher stance on North Korea may hamper Seoul's bid for dialogue. U.S. slapped fresh sanctions on North Korea last month following its alleged cyber attack on Sony Pictures. Before departing for China, the top American official stressed the role of Beijing and its exceptional leverage over Pyongyang. He said the biggest instability in the region was Pyongyang's nuclear pursuit and that China could persuade Pyongyang to resume credible disarmament talks, given its long-standing ties. At his last stop in Tokyo, the high-ranking U.S. official is expected to discuss regional issues such as Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. Seoul continues to demand a sincere apology from Tokyo over the matter as a catalyst to break the current icy relations between the neighboring countries. Kim Yeongjong, ARIRANG News.
The U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee has unanimously voted to approve Ashton Carter as the next U.S. Secretary of Defense. The 25-0 vote signals that the former Deputy Defense Secretary is unlikely to face much Republican resistance to his confirmation when it goes to a full Senate vote. A source at the Senate reportedly says the full chamber will probably vote on Carter's nomination on Wednesday or Thursday. That means Carter could start his new role at the Pentagon by the end of the week. The 60-year-old, who has tough views on how to deal with North Korea's nuclear weapons program, is U.S. President Barack Obama's first pick to replace outgoing Defense Chief Chuck Hagel. Now, ultra-right-wing groups in Japan are going all out with hate speech rallies targeting ethnic Koreans there, while local governments are calling for legal measures to stop the rallies. Skeptics accuse the Shinzo Abe administration of turning a blind eye. Our Hwang Sung-hee reports.
Insults against Koreans fly across the streets of the Japanese capital, Tokyo. The number of hate rallies against some 500,000 ethnic Koreans has risen sharply in Japan. The campaigners say they cannot tolerate the privileges, such as the right to vote and access to welfare, bestowed to Korean residents. They justify the racial discrimination as their right to freedom of speech.
What I'm doing is politics. Some say politics and discrimination is different, but it's all the same.
It's a serious matter that has been taken to the international stage. In August, the United Nations Human Rights Committee demanded Japan add hate speech to legislation that bans racial discrimination. In December, the Supreme Court upheld a ruling by Osaka's High Court, the city with the largest Korean population, which ordered an ultra-right group pay a $120,000 fine for its hate speech rally. But the Abe administration has remained passive, saying the issue is under review. Since the beginning of the year, 24 local governments have taken the matter into their own hands, pressuring the central government to take legal measures.
It's extremely dangerous to protect comments like kill someone under the banner of freedom of expression.
While the Abe administration turns a blind eye to racial discrimination, concerns are rising as ultra-right-wing groups are planning a large-scale hate speech rally later this month. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
The family of the American woman held hostage by the Islamic State in Syria says they are heartbroken after the militant group sent them a message saying their daughter is dead. U.S. President Barack Obama vowed to bring her captors to justice. For more, here's our Kim Hyun-bin.
The United States has confirmed the death of an American female aid worker held hostage by the Islamic State militant group in Syria. Islamic State said last Friday that 26-year-old Kayla Mueller was killed in a Jordanian airstrike on the IS stronghold of Raqqa. IS didn't offer any proof to back up its assertion, and the U.S. government remains skeptical about the group's claim. However, U.S. authorities said Tuesday that Ms. Mueller's family received a private message from IS this week with additional information, which confirmed she was dead. Sources who have been briefed on the evidence of death have told U.S. media that it consisted of at least 3 photographs, all headshots. That said, it's not known whether the injuries seen in the photos were consistent with the militant group's claim that she died in an airstrike. Ms. Mueller is the only American woman known to have died in IS captivity. In recent months, Islamic State has beheaded 3 Americans, 2 Britons, and 2 Japanese hostages, most of them aid workers and journalists. In a statement, U.S. President Barack Obama said he condemned the terrorist group and stated that those responsible for Ms. Mueller's death will be brought to justice. This latest development comes as multiple sources say President Obama will send Congress an authorization for the use of military force to fight IS on Wednesday. The president is expected to ask for a 3-year authorization. It will also leave open the option to send in ground troops if needed. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
And in other news, America's NBC News has suspended its star anchor Brian Williams for 6 months without pay. Now, this comes after he admitted that a story he repeated many times in the past about his experience during the Iraq War was not true. Our Ijeon has more.
Brian Williams, a trusted newsman whose NBC nightly news drew over 9 million viewers a night, is now suspended for 6 months without pay. This decision follows his voluntary step back from the news desk over the weekend. The president of NBC News, Deborah Turnus, said in an internal memo Tuesday that what Williams did was, quote, wrong and completely inappropriate for someone in his position. The NBC News anchor was put in the hot seat after he admitted that his account of the helicopter incident in Iraq was not true. Williams reported in January that he was on a helicopter that was hit by a grenade in Iraq in 2003. However, military veterans from the incident said that he was not actually on the helicopter that was forced down.
I want to apologize. I said I was traveling in an aircraft that was hit by RPG fire. I was instead in a following aircraft.
But there's a chance that the star anchor could make a comeback. The CEO of NBC Universal, Steve Burke, said Tuesday that although Williams jeopardized the trust millions of Americans place in NBC News, he deserves a second chance. Williams has been anchoring NBC Nightly News for over a decade, succeeding Tom Brokaw. For now, Lester Holt will continue to substitute for Williams. Ijeon, ARIRANG News.
In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. More than 34 trillion won, or roughly $31 billion is how much Korea's major companies plan to pour into investments this year. The government has pledged to give the firms full support, including special loan programs. Our Song Ji-sun has this report.
The government has vowed to do all it can to boost corporate investment. Korea's Commerce Minister Yoon Sang-jik made the pledge on Wednesday at a meeting with the business leaders of 16 key companies like Samsung Electronics and Hyundai Motor. He said the government will provide all necessary support to encourage big businesses to plow more money into the economy. Yoon added that business leaders should not hesitate in laying out their difficulties and stressed the government will do what it can to remove any obstacles. The companies say they will invest a combined $31.4 billion into projects that begin this year. About half is made up from Samsung's new semiconductor production line in Pyeongtaek, which will be twice as big as its current one in Suwon. The government has expedited equipping electricity facilities by more than 1 year on Samsung's request to speed up the construction. Minister Yoon also called for corporate restructuring through mergers and acquisitions, citing the example of Samsung selling its chemical sector to Hanwha Group late last year in a bid to focus on its strength. The Commerce Ministry will hold a similar meeting with the heads of foreign companies before the end of the month. Song Ji-sun, ARIRANG News.
The number of new jobs added in Korea last month dropped to its lowest level in almost 2 years. Data from Statistics Korea shows that the number of people with jobs stood at slightly over 25 million in January, up around 350,000 from a year ago. But the agency says the slowing growth came from the high base effect in January last year, when Korea created more than 700,000 jobs. Now, it added that the Lunar New Year holiday, one of Korea's biggest holidays, fell in January last year, creating more jobs in the retail and transportation sectors. Meanwhile, Korea's export prices also dropped to their lowest level in 28 years last month due to falling global oil prices and the strengthening Korean won against the greenback. The Bank of Korea says the prices plunged by over 4% in January from a month earlier. That means local exporters earn less in local currency when shipping out the same amount of goods. Now, import prices in the meantime fell by a bigger margin than export prices. This was also on the back of falling oil prices. Import prices tumbled more than 7% in January from December. Finance ministers and the central bank governors from the group of 20 nations say global economies should implement monetary and fiscal policy to boost the economy if needed. Now, this came out at the end of the two-day meeting in Istanbul. Shin Se-min tells us what the joint communique entails.
The world's 20 largest economies vow to address uneven global economic growth by using monetary and fiscal policy to prevent further stagnation. Wrapping up the two-day G20 finance ministers meeting in Istanbul, the finance ministers and central bankers emphasized the need for structural reform in boosting the fragile global economy. In their written communique released Tuesday, the officials vowed to continuously review monetary and fiscal policy settings and act decisively if needed. The text made note of sluggish growth in the Eurozone and Japan, adding that some of the emerging market economies are also slowing down. But it said the European Central Bank's recent quantitative easing policy would support further recovery in the Eurozone area. On tumbling global oil prices, financial officials called on countries to take advantage of low oil prices to further investment. The statement said the sharp decline in oil prices will provide some boost to global growth, but with varying implications across economies by increasing the purchasing power of oil importing economies and exerting temporary downward pressure on inflation. The meeting of the G20 finance leaders comes at a crucial time with each economy operating under different monetary policies and with the troubles in Greece casting a dark shadow over the Eurozone economy. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Apple has become the first American company to close with a market capitalization of over $700 billion. Apple's stock closed nearly 2% up on Tuesday at a record high of slightly over $122. Now that makes Apple worth an estimated $710 billion. Now, to give you some context, this is twice as big as Google's market cap, four times bigger than Bank of America's, and 8 times larger than McDonald's. Apple's CEO Tim Cook says this was achieved because the company was able to sell its high-end products to Chinese consumers. Now, the British bank HSBC is under fire after a report revealed its private Swiss bank subsidiary had helped its super-rich clients conceal their assets and dodge paying taxes. The reports, citing leaked bank documents, say more than 100,000 customers around the world are suspected of this deed, including clients from Korea. Son Jung-in has the details.
HSBC has found itself in hot water following a revelation by an international team of journalists that found the bank maintained secret accounts for a variety of tax-dodging criminals, politicians, and celebrities. The BBC report says that between 2005 and 2007, HSBC's private banking arm in Switzerland assisted in concealing billions of dollars in assets of more than 100,000 customers around the world so they could evade tax authorities. The revelations show the private bank managed accounts including those of Saudi businessmen who are suspected of once funding Osama bin Laden, as well as the King of Jordan. It also uncovered some 20 bank accounts owned by Korean nationals worth some $21 million. Responding to allegations, the financial giant said it was cooperating with relevant authorities to ensure its private banking services aren't used to evade taxes and launder money. CEO of the private bank Franco Mora said a new senior management team had since overhauled the business. The list was originally compiled from a massive cache of data a former HSBC employee smuggled out before quitting his job in 2008. As government investigative teams around the world launch their own probes, the whistleblower warns this revelation is just the tip of the iceberg. 손정인, 아리랑 뉴스.
A night at the opera. For many people, it's an experience reserved for special occasions. But here in Seoul, the opera apparently has become more accessible for people of all ages through a new program that's catching on quickly. Our Im Yoon-hee joins us today with more on this. Good afternoon, Yoon-hee. I'm intrigued.
You're intrigued. Well, operas, a lot of people like them, but really they are for special occasions, to get dressed up. Very expensive tickets. But I have some performances from some of the world's top opera companies that are available here in Seoul. Take a look at this next report to find out where.
You can always head to the local theater for a quick action film or a comedy. But why not broaden your horizons and check out a live performance of a world-famous opera? There's nothing quite like the grandeur of an opera, with stunning stage effects and rich voices that soar through the air. Now the splendor of the experience is available at your local movie theater.
It's hard to get your hands on tickets for local opera performances. Plus, they're so expensive. Now you can appreciate an opera performance at your local movie theater, and the response has been great.
The performers may be thousands of miles away, but the huge screen and crystal clear HD quality makes it hard to not feel like you're right there with them.
I really enjoyed it. You can see world-famous opera singers for such a reasonable price. It was a great experience.
It's a new trend that's catching on quickly, making the opera an experience that everyone, anywhere, can enjoy.
So what are some of the operas being offered?
Right, so a lot of different companies offering a few different performances. Some of them include Tchaikovsky's Iolanta, Bluebeard's Castle, of course the New York Metropolitan Opera. They're offering The Merry Widow and Macbeth, some very popular performances. Now all of these are being shown, they're being streamed live, and you can catch them at Megabox is one venue, and that's a local chain here in Korea, and they have them all over the country. So really right around your corner, you can catch the opera anywhere now.
Okay, and the streaming live idea, that's limited to operas as of now?
No, so that's actually a trend that I've noticed catching on recently. So the National Theatre of Korea also offers live streaming of plays from very reputable play companies around the world as well. So currently they're offering Frankenstein at the National Theatre of Korea. But really people are saying, some customers are saying that with this, even though it's being screened, because it's live, you still get that feeling of it being live, that sense of, excitement with the performance. And they said with every performance it's different, and really it makes it so much more accessible, all of these performances.
Right. I mean, we are living in a world where it's you just travel it's one-day travel. You get to anywhere around the world, and now you don't even have to go elsewhere to enjoy operas, apparently.
Right. Your neighborhood theater.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Yoon-hee, for bringing us this report today.
You're always welcome.
Hello everyone, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. Now that we have the cool temperatures off our backs, today we have high levels of fine dust to worry about currently. Seoul stands at 138 micrograms per cubic meter, which is about 3 to 4 times higher than the normal. Now, other regions are looking bad or worse, so try not to stay out for too long. Now, today we are also expecting some precipitation in various places, and it won't be much, but up to 1 centimeter of snow will fall on Chungcheongbuk-do province, while a light rain is expected to fall on Jeju Island and on all other provinces. So for those of you in these regions, make sure to have your umbrellas with you. Now, looking at the satellite map, there will be times when the cloud covers up the sun completely, and also visibility is looking pretty bad, so make sure to be extra careful on the roads. Now, let's take a readings for today. Seoul will peak up to 6 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will both reach up to 12 degrees. Now, moving over to other regions, Jeju Island gets up to 12 as well. Dokdo hits 7, while Mangkeungang is sunny at -5 degrees. That's all for me at this hour. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Yeongjong.
All right, thank you very much, Michelle. That's the end of ARIRANG News. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung in Seoul. I'll be back with all of that and more at 4 p.m. Korea time.